prayer?
Of course. Heavenly Father, we just come before you as your humble servants. We ask that you sprinkle our hearts clean, that you eliminate the distractions of our day, of our past, of our future. Just bring us right into your presence and your peace, and help us to learn what you need us to know tonight. Help us to apply it to our lives. Ask that you speak through Papa and help him to deliver this message as if you were doing it yourself. We love you, and we ask for all these things in your name, in your son's name, Jesus. Amen.
So I was watching a special 4-part series on Showtime about Bill Cosby. And Bill Cosby, his career was just incredible, but it was the persona that he built up. He basically became America's dad. There wasn't a place you couldn't watch a commercial or TV without him being on there. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the persona he was presenting to people, this moral dad that you could trust, he was raping and roofing women. They now know it's over 60 women that he ended up, having sex with and roofing. And the reason that it's so interesting is because he began doing this well into the 70s, all the way up into 2000. And for 25 years, women were silent. Wow. All of those women didn't say anything. And when they talked to him about it, it all came down to, no one would believe me. Here's this powerful man, and I wasn't going to put myself out there. It was all generated by fear in all of these women.
Wow.
And when one person stepped up and just said, I'm not going to deal with it, I'm going to go forward, then that one person that showed, strength and moral fortitude, everyone followed. Everyone just came out of the woodwork after that. And then, of course, it was too late, because the law represents, hey, look, you know what? If you're too afraid to bring your case in 4 years, sorry, statute of limitations limits you and you can no longer, prosecute.
Wow.
So in 20 states now, these women went forward and actually removed the statute of limitations completely for all sexual assault. It's now in 20 states that there is no statute of limitations for sexual assault. Pretty amazing.
Wow.
So, but still, all this was generated by fear. And if you watch the special, you get to see all of these women, you can't blame them. They're victims. He was the perpetrator, no question about it. But they were trusting him, and they were afraid to take a step and say, hey, you know what, this is weird. I'm not going to take your drink, and I'm not going to be here by myself with you when you said there was going to be a party with a bunch of people. There was all kinds of red flags. Still, he was in the position of power, but that even the decisions to stay were fear-based. So it's very interesting. So there's two types of fear. We have the fear of God. And let's just go to Psalm 111:10.
It says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. A good understanding have all those who do his commandments. His praise endures forever.
Okay. Then Proverbs 19:23.
It says, the fear of the Lord leads to life, so that one may sleep satisfied, untouched by evil.
Wow. Nice to be untouched by evil.
Mm.
And then we're going to sum up these 3 verses after you read them all. Proverbs 14:27.
14:27 says, the fear of the Lord is a fountain of life, that one may avoid the snares of death.
Wow. So if people had the fear of God, they would have had wisdom. They would have had a fountain of life. Think about it. That means that the very basis of life, the fear of God creates a fountain, or like a roaring river, endless supply of fountain of life in you. And also in this particular sex, it keeps you from the snares of death, or that you could say the fear of you dying. So wisdom, a fountain of life and energy, and basically keeps you from the snares of death and protects you from evil. So here, the opposite of fearing of fear, which is fearing God, which is also humility and disregarding yourself, actually creates the power to overcome natural fear, which is very fascinating.
Wow.
It's, in these opposites that God finds strength in us through our humility. And that's why Jesus said humility is the strongest of all possible spiritual tenets. James says that if you, bow yourself down, God will lift you up. So all of that's connected to fear. And this word is yira, which means dismayed by God. Awesome and reverence is what the word means. And then Second Timothy talks about what we call the spirit of fear. And this is basically getting into all the types of fear that you can have. Turn to 2 Timothy 2.
Is it 1 or 2?
It's 2 Timothy 1.
For God has not given us a spirit of timidity, but of power and love and discipline.
There it is, straight out. God has not given us a spirit of timidity. Actually, that word means cowardice. So basically, there is a spirit of timidity or cowardice or fear that can exist in people that just, hogties them. Go to Haggai 2:5. Haggai being after Zephaniah, it's in the very back of the Bible, just before Zechariah and Malachi.
As for the promise which I made when you came out of Egypt, my spirit is abiding in your midst. Do not fear.
Okay, so the opposite of fear is to recognize God's spirit in abiding in our midst. In this particular situation, it's basically recognizing the Holy Spirit's in your life. It's the Holy Spirit that gives you boldness, and mentions that all the time in Acts. It was the Holy Spirit that led them to boldness, and or if you go to the beach, because if I went to the beach, I'd go down to the jetty and I would get a little bolder.
That's enough.
In the desert to get a little bolder. Anyway, so one of the fears that we talk about, one of the strong ones in our lives, can be the fear of man. Go to Psalm 56:11, talking about the fear of man, and that's what we have in the Cosby case. Basically, the fear of man that kept these women suffering all these years and not coming forward. It was really only one woman that they tried to prosecute him with. And then, of course, he was only in jail for 3 years and got out. If these other 50 women had come forward, he would have been in jail for the rest of his life. So Psalm 56:11.
In God I have put my trust. I shall not be afraid. What can man do to me?
Okay, so when we put our trust in God and we're afraid, I'm talking in any situation, you have fear. You have the businesses you have to make. You have a check you got to write. You have a business partner that you're going to put in place of a responsible position, and you're looking through the details. Well, the fear of God gives you wisdom, according to Proverbs 19. And then in this situation, basically, you're not supposed to fear man because God gives you this incredible ability. Let me go back here. When you trust him. So you just put everything aside when you're in these situations of fear, and you just basically say, I'm going to trust God. I'm going to put my trust in God, which is basically faith. You exercise your faith, you move past your fear, and you go forward. Let's go to Genesis chapter 32. And just read Genesis 32, and go to all the way down to 23. Read the whole thing.
Now, as Jacob went on his way, the angels of God met him. Jacob said when he saw them, "This is God's camp." So he named that place Mahanaim. Mahanaim? Did I say Mahanaim? Then Jacob sent messengers before him to his brother Esau in the land of Seir in the country of Edom. He also commanded them, saying, "Thus you shall say to the Lord, to my lord Esau, thus says your servant Jacob, I have sojourned with Laban and stayed until now. I have oxen and donkeys and flocks and male and female servants, and I have sent to tell my lord that I may find favor in your sight." The messengers returned to Jacob, saying, "We came to your brother Esau, and furthermore, he's coming to meet you, and 400 men are with him." And Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed. And he divided the people who were with him, and the flocks and the herds and the camels in 2 companies. For he said, "If Esau comes to one company and attacks it, the company which is left will escape." Jacob said, "O God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, O Lord, who said to me, 'Return to your country and to your relatives, and I will prosper you.' I am unworthy of the loving kindness and all the faithfulness which you have shown to your servant, for which my staff only I crossed this Jordan. So for with my staff only I crossed this Jordan. And now I have become 2 companies. Deliver me, I pray, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, that he will not come and attack me, and the mothers with the children. For you said, I will surely prosper you and make you your descendants as the sand of the sea, which is too great to be numbered." So he spent the night there. Then he selected from what he had with him to present for his brother Esau 200 female goats and 20 male goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 milking camels and their colts, 40 cows and 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys and 10 male donkeys. He's delivered them to the hand of his servants, every drove by itself, and said to his servants, "Pass on before me, and put space between droves." He commanded one in front, saying, "When my brother Esau meets you and asks you, saying, 'To whom do you belong, and where are you going, and to whom do these animals in front of you belong?' Then you shall say, 'These belong to your servant Jacob. It is a present to my lord Esau, and behold, he also is behind us.'" Then he commanded the second and the third and all those who followed the droves, saying, "After this manner you shall speak to Esau when you find him, and you shall say, 'Behold, your servant Jacob is also behind us.' For he said, 'I will appease him with the present that goes before me. Then afterward I will see his face. Perhaps he will accept me.' So the present passed on before him, while he himself spent that night in the camp. Now he arose that same night and took his 2 wives and his 2 maids and his 11 children and crossed the ford of Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream, and he sent them across whatever he had.
Keep going.
Then Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. Okay. When he saw that he had not prevailed against him, he touched the socket of his thigh, so that the socket of Jacob's thigh was dislocated while he wrestled with him. Then he said, "Let me go, for the dawn is breaking." But he said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." So he said to him, "What is your name?" And said Jacob. He said, "Your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel. For you have striven with God and with men and have prevailed." Then Jacob asked him and said, "Please tell me your name." But he said, Why is it that you ask my name?" And he blessed them there. So Jacob named the place Peniel and said, "I have seen God face to face, yet my life has been preserved." Now the sun rose on him, and he crossed over Peniel, and he was limping on his thigh. Therefore, to this day, the sons of Israel did not eat the sinew of the hip, which was on the socket of the thigh, because he touched the socket of Jacob's thigh and the sinew of the hip. So God wrestled with Jacob physically.
Yeah, this angel of the Lord wrestled with Jacob.
Trip out.
And he couldn't get away.
Dislocated his thigh.
Yeah. He had to dislocate his thigh to get away from Jacob. Okay, keep going.
Oh, that's the end of the chapter.
Yeah, go to 33.
Okay. Then I've never read that, actually. That is very interesting. Then Jacob lifted his eyes and looked, and behold, Esau was coming, and 400 men with him. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the two maids. He put the maids and their children in front, and Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph last. But he himself passed on ahead of them and bowed down to the ground 7 times until he came near his brother. Then Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. He lifted his eyes and saw the woman and the children and said, "Who are these with you?" He said, "The children whom God has graciously given your servants." Then the maids came with their children, and they bowed down. Leah likewise came over with their children, and they bowed down. And afterward Joseph came with Rachel, and they bowed down. And he said, "What do you mean by all this company which I have met?" And he said, "To find favor in the sight of my Lord." But Esau said, "I have plenty, my brother. Let what you have be your own." Jacob said, "No, please. If I have found favor in your sight, then take my present from my hand, for I see your face as one sees the face of God, and you have received me favorably. Please take my gift which has been brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me, and because I have plenty." Thus he urged him, and he took it. Then Esau said, "Let us take our journey and go, and I will go before you." But he said to him, "My Lord knows that the children are frail, and that the flocks and herds which are nursing are a care to me. And if they are driven hard one day, all the flocks will die. Please let my Lord pass on before his servant, and I will proceed at my leisure, according to the pace of the cattle that before me, and according to the pace of the children, until I come to my Lord at Sire." Esau said, Please let me leave with you some of the people who are with me." But he said, "What need is there? Let me find favor in the sight of my Lord." So Esau returned that day on his way to Seir. Jacob journeyed to Succoth and built for himself a house and made booths for his livestock. Therefore, the place is named Succoth.
Okay. All right. What a story. So Jacob knew he had to travel through Seir, right? And which is in the land of Edom. And that is the land of Esau, which we call the land of Esau. Does everyone remember the story, what happened between Jacob and Esau? Jacob's mother basically fooled Isaac so that he would bless Jacob and get basically Esau was the eldest, and he was supposed to get the inheritance and the blessing. And one day he came in and he said, "What is that soup you're making?" Right? Mm-hmm. And Jacob said, "It's some red soup." And he tricked him into trading his inheritance and his firstborn inheritance for the soup. And so Esau was banished and went down to Edom, which is a very southern part of Israel, outside the land of Israel. And he had to go there, and he realized that he was going to be running into his brother. Now, is there any indication that he knew that Esau was going to do anything harmful to him? Did he get a message saying, "I'm going to kill you"? Or, I mean, what was the only indication that something bad could happen?
That he had 400 men with him.
He had 400 men. But, he's up all night. He's waking up his wives in the middle of the night, making them cross rivers. I mean, he can't sleep. Look at these gifts he gives. I mean, 200 female goats, 20 male goats, 200 ewes, 20 rams, 30 milking camels and their colts, 40 cows, 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys, and 10 male donkeys. I mean, a bribe for sure. Yeah. And then what does he do? He raises army, to put them in the most, in the most strategic place. And where does he put the children? Verse 2 of 33. He put the maids and their children in front, and Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph last. So the kids were just going to get mowed if Esau was mad. So look at all of this consternation, waking up the family, can't sleep. And then on top of all this, he wrestles with the angel of the Lord. Does he show any fear? Absolutely none. Which is weird. So he has this kind of faith towards God. He prays this prayer, which is an amazing prayer about, "You gave me your inheritance. You said you would prosper me." He's actually quoting God, and yet he is he is driven to powerlessness over his fear of his brother. It's just an amazing story. Matthew 10. Here's a situation where people could be mighty before the Lord and have a total, Achilles heel when it comes to a fear of one person, and change all of what they're going to do that night, give all of their possessions away, bribe the person, manipulate them, all out of fear, changing all of the, things that you're going to do or would do in this situation, including giving that's a big portion of his wealth that he was going to give away because he's scared. Matthew chapter 10, verses 28 through 30.
Do not fear those who kill the body but are unable to kill the soul, but rather fear him who is able to destroy both soul and body in hell.
Keep going.
Are not 2 sparrows sold for a cent? And yet not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father, but the very hairs of your head are all numbered. So do not fear. You are more valuable than many sparrows.
So God is saying, hey, think about me. I care about you and I love you. So do not fear those. Hey, Jacob, do not fear those who kill the body but aren't able to kill the soul, but rather fear him who is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. So Jacob has a healthy fear of God, but not this reference to his brother. Mm-hmm. Just completely incapacitated over that one fear. So you could be a man on fire for God and be completely immobilized by fear of man. It's possible. Next thing is fear kills your witness and your ability to speak out. Go to John chapter 7, verse 13.
It says, yet no one was speaking openly of him for the fear of the Jews.
Yeah. People are seeing his miracles. People were saying this guy's the Messiah, but they were unwilling to speak out because they feared the Jews. They feared the leadership of the Jews. So their witness was dead. We've read this before too. Go to John chapter 9. Someone started at verse 13 and go all the way to 23.
They brought to the Pharisees the man who was formerly blind. Now it was a Sabbath on the day when Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes. Then the Pharisees also were asking him again how he received his sight. And he said to him, he applied clay to my eyes and washed, and I see. Therefore some of the Pharisees were saying, this man is not from God because he does not keep the Sabbath. But others were saying, how can a man who is a sinner perform such signs? And there was a division among them. So they said to the blind man again, what do you say about him, since he opened your eyes? And he said, he is a prophet. The Jews then did not believe it of him that he had been blind and had received sight until they called the parents of the very one who had received his sight and questioned them, saying, is this your son who you say was born blind? Then how does he now see? His parents answered them and said, we know that this is our son and that he was born blind, but how he now sees, we do not know, or who opened his eyes, we do not know. Ask him. He is of age. He will speak for himself. His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jews, for the Jews had already agreed that if anyone confessed him to be Christ, he was to be put out of the synagogue. For this reason, his parents said, he is of age, ask him.
You can't speak out because they'll throw you out of church. I mean, you can't be thrown out of church. Obviously, that's the place you need to be in this situation. Synagogue had it all right in relation to Jesus, right? So their inability to speak out, their inability to be a part of this miracle. This is one of the 3 miracles, according to rabbinic law, that would prove that the man who healed somebody who was not just born blind, that was not just blind, but had to be born blind. that healing of that man was one of the signs of the Messiah. And his parents' involvement, they couldn't be involved. They were too afraid of the people running the church. Sad. So the last thing is, fear turns you into a secret undercover disciple. We all know Nick at Night, right? Go to John chapter 19. Verse 38.
After these things, Joseph of Arimathea, being a disciple of Jesus, but a secret one for the fear of the Jews, asked Pilate that he might take away the body of Jesus. And Pilate granted permission. So he came and took away his body.
Yeah, so he didn't go to the Jews and ask permission. He went to Pilate. It says here he was a secret disciple. I don't even know if that's actually possible. But he was a secret undercover Christian, you know, and it was because he feared the Jews, the fear of man, also keeping him unable to speak out. He did speak out for Jesus at his trial, but he wasn't able to say much. He didn't put up a big fight, which is too bad. So what are the results of fear? Go to Isaiah 41:10. We've already shown what fear of man does and the results of fear of man, but the results overall of fear. Let's take a look at Isaiah chapter 41, verses 10 through 11. Go from verse 10 through 13.
Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not anxiously look about you, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Surely I will help you. Surely I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Behold, all those who are angered at you will be shamed and dishonored. Those who contend with you will be as nothing and will perish. You will seek those who quarrel with you, but will not find them. Those who war with you will be as nothing and non-existent. For I am the Lord your God, who upholds your right hand, who says to you, do not fear, I will help you. Do not fear, you. Oh, yeah.
Keep going.
Do not fear, you worm Jacob, you men of Israel. I will help you, declares the Lord, and your Redeemer is the Holy One of Israel.
Wow. All right. So fearing causes people to get distracted, to look anxiously around you. Okay. And we all know it just in sports, if you're stealing a base, you don't look at home plate. That slows you down. Okay. You don't get distracted and look at who's trying to throw you out. You don't look around you. When you're eyeballed and going down the hill, when you're skiing, whatever you're doing, when you're at bat, you don't look around you and you don't anxiously look around you. So this fear makes us unsteady, weak, and untrustworthy, basically allowing us to take our eye off the ball and makes us anxiously look around to see who's coming after us, constantly looking behind us. Unsteady and a person who's this way is unsteady and flaky, and they don't have your back. Go to Deuteronomy 20. And this happens in marriages too, where a man will not lead his family. So if a man doesn't lead his family and is afraid to lead his family, then of course, what happens? His wife will take up the job, which is just embarrassing. 80% of all the loans I do, the wife handles all the details in the transaction. I don't even hear from the man at all. In a six-figure mortgage transaction, handles all the paperwork, comes to the place, goes through the application with me. Man does 0, 80% of the time, 8 out of 10. Deuteronomy 20, verses 1 through 3.
When you go out to battle against your enemies and see horses and chariots and people more numerous than you, do not be afraid of them, for the Lord your God, who brought you from the land of Egypt, is with you. And when you are approaching battle, the priest shall come near and speak to the people. You shall say to them, Hear, O Israel, you are appointing the battle against your enemies today. Do not be faint-hearted. Do not be afraid or panic or tremble before them.
Keep going.
The Lord your God is the one who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies, to save you.
Wow. All right. So this is basically saying they're non-existent. You don't have to look at the armies. You're not even supposed to be afraid of them. When you hear them approaching, do not be faint-hearted. Don't be a coward. Don't panic or tremble. For it's the Lord your God who fights against them. So basically, the armies are just going to lay down, which is what he told them over and over again. Same thing happened in Joshua. It happened with Gideon. Here's a situation where, being unsteady and flaky and panicking and being faint-hearted are all the results of fearing man, which changes your goals, changes your trajectory, and you're supposed to look at those situations and say, if God is for us, who's against us? Period. Next result of fear is we can't love or serve others if we are in fear. 1 John 4:18.
You can read it.
There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, because fear involves punishment. And the one who fears is not perfected of love. So the fear is the fear of being punished. The cowardice is the fear of being punished.
Mm.
So if we can't love or serve others if we are in fear. So why? Let's extract this a little bit. How come we can't love others if we're in fear?
Because you're thinking about yourself.
Yeah. And it's narcissism. It's complete selfishness.
Yeah.
Now you possibly could serve others if you were in fear, but it would be manipulation, like in Jacob's case. Giving him all his goods, basically trying to manipulate the situation.
Mm.
And then next, the results of fear leads to sin. Go to Genesis 26. And someone just read verse 7.
When the men of this place asked about his wife, he said, "She's my sister," for he was afraid of saying "my wife," thinking the men of the place might kill me on account of Rebekah, for she is beautiful.
Okay, so what's the results here? First of all, this is Isaac, who copied his Abraham. Abraham did the same thing, called Sarah his sister.
Yeah, lying.
Yeah, so lying here, he lies. And what happens when he lies? What is the result of that?
Doesn't the king go, "Why did you say this to me? Why did you make me?" Or wasn't it like he ended up scolding him because he's like, "You almost made me go into sin with your own lie, because I would have slept with another man's wife."
Well, on top of that, he put his wife at risk. He didn't have his wife's back, didn't protect her. If she would have been taken on by this king and basically had taken him into her harem, which is what he was willing to do, he was afraid for his own neck, that if he said she was my wife, she's so pretty, they might kill him. I mean, it's just totally goes into a situation to where he's in total fear, gives up his wife, fear for his life, gives up his testimony even. The guy doesn't even respect him now when he catches him.
Hmm.
No integrity now. He's lost all his integrity based upon fear. And then 4, the results of fear leads to no strength and inaction. Go to Luke 21. I'll read this. Is the return of Christ, Luke 21:25. Return of Christ. There will be signs in the sun and moon and the stars, and on the earth dismay among nations. Dismay is the word fear. In perplexity at the roaring of the sea and the waves, men fainting from fear and the expectation of things which are coming upon the world. I mean, literally, men are fainting for fear. They have zero strength. They can't even do anything. So it leads to complete inaction. If you're like paralyzed by fear and you're trying to convince yourself that you're doing something and you're applying the wisdom to the situation, but when you really look into it, the fear is moving forward. You know, that's a situation where you have to sift it out. Am I evaluating the situation or am I just afraid? And it's really important to have that discussion. If you're just looking over the details and you're trying to be a good steward, that's different. If you're pretending to be a good steward because you're afraid, that will find you out. And I've been in that position. I've done that.
I love the next verse. It says, then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. But when these things begin to take place, straighten up and lift your heads, because your redemption is drawing near.
Yeah. Get a backbone, right? Do the opposite.
I love that.
Yeah.
So great.
So, and then we have the idea of Gideon. Gideon is going to go up against this bigger army than him. And God wants to thin the numbers. You remember that story? Because God wants them to say, if we beat these guys, it was because God went before us and not the armies. Go to Judges, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, chapter 7, verses 1 through 4.
Then Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, and all the people who were with him rose early and camped beside the spring of Harod, and the camp of Midian was on the north side of them by the hill of Moreh in the valley. The Lord said to Gideon, the people who are with you are too many for me to give Midian into their hands, for Israel would become boastful, saying, my own power has delivered me. Now therefore come, proclaim in the hearing of the people, saying, whoever is afraid and trembling, let him return and depart from Mount Gilead. So 22,000 people returned, but 10,000 remained.
22,000 when he said, hey, who's afraid? Lost 2/3 of the army. So there's your remnant that's left.
Yeah.
I used to read a book on the combat strength of units in World War II. Out of a unit of 12 men, which is a platoon, it's 12 to 18 men, only 3 people fire their rifles at the enemy in a firefight. 3.
Wow. Even in the story, though, there's only 10,000. And then God said, this is too many. And then so it only came with 300.
Yeah. Yeah, he got him down to 300.
But all the rest of that's crazy. And then the God said, I'll deliver you with 300 men. Wow. 300.
And those 300 had no problem going and doing it.
They should have made 300 based upon this story, not the freaking other one.
I love the end. Verse 8. So the 300 men took the people's provisions and their trumpets into their hands, and Gideon sent all other men of Israel, each to his tents, but retained the 300 men, and the camp of Midian was below him in the valley. I love that. Everyone grabbed their provisions, their trumpets, 300. That's cool.
Yeah. I mean, if you had to have numbers and you have faith in numbers leading you, it's not numbers that get it done. It's brave and powerful people of faith that get it done. So the ultimate deal is being courageous. Being courageous is knowing God is with you and resting in him. Basically, all the things that we said before, that resting in God's, it's the fear of God that keeps the fear of man and the fear of what's going to happen to you away from you. It's the actual humility in fearing God more than anything else that can happen to you, to your body and everything else. And that creates a fountain of life. It creates an energy. It creates a focus. It creates your ability to move forward and not be distracted. It keeps you from panicking. It keeps you from looking anxiously behind you or beside you. And I think I've told you that story before about MacArthur, where he was standing on a beach and his captain came up and was freaking out. And he said to him, the enemy's trapped us. The enemy's in front of us, behind us, and beside us. And MacArthur said, awesome, they can't get away now. So be courageous. Go to Joshua. We all know this verse. But this is the verse that God gave to them just before they invaded the Holy Land. He says this to Joshua. And in Joshua 1:8, starting in verse 7, starting in verse 6, he says, be strong and courageous, for you shall give the people possession of this land, which I swore to the fathers to give them. Only be strong and very courageous. Be careful to do according to the law which Moses, my servant, commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right or the left. Don't get distracted. Don't panic. Don't look to your left or your right, so that you will have success wherever you go. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have success. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not tremble or be dismayed. For the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. That word dismayed is the same word for the fear of God. So very fascinating stuff. And then last, fear comes when we get distracted by circumstances and then we lose tunnel vision. We're supposed to have tunnel vision on Christ. And that's what the story of Peter's about. Matthew 14. Matthew 14, um,
22.
Verses 22. But there's one passage in here I want to take a look at. I'm in Mark. There's one passage. I have a t-shirt. I don't know if you've seen it, but I wear it around town. And people don't know what to think of it, but it's related to this passage. Let's see, Matthew 14. Oh yeah, this isn't the passage actually. Okay, so I'm just going to read it. Verse 22. Immediately he made the disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him to the other side, while he sent the crowds away. After he had sent the crowds away, he went up to the mountain by himself to pray. And when it was evening, he was there alone, but the boat was already a long distance from land, battered by waves, for the wind was contrary. And in the fourth watch of the night, he came to them walking on the sea. When the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified. And they said, it is a ghost. And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, take courage, it is I, do not be afraid. And Peter said to him, Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water. And he said, come. And Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water and came forward. But seeing the wind, looking to his left and his right and anxiously around him, he became frightened and beginning to sink. He cried out, Lord, save me. Immediately, Jesus stretched out his hand and took a hold of him, said to him, you have little faith. Why do you doubt? And when they got into the boat, the wind stopped. And those who were in the boat worshiped him, saying, you are certainly the Son of God. So Peter, even with Jesus in front of him, seeing him, looking to his left and his right, being distracted by the wind was scary to him, and then he lost it. So getting distracted and losing tunnel vision is, what could cause the problem here. What I was trying to get at is, let's see here. This passage talks about, there's another passage where it says that they were all in the boat and it started to get really windy. And they came and woke Jesus up because Jesus was taking a nap, and he got mad. That is like, what are you doing? So I have a t-shirt that says, it has that verse. It says, Jesus took naps. Be like Jesus. I just think that's pretty funny.
That's really funny.
Yeah. Anyway, there you go, guys. Many times we manipulate our fear into believing that we're just taking our time and walking through things. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if it's fear that's driving that manipulation, it's important to separate that out. Not look to your left or right. Don't use it as an excuse. Don't do things you normally wouldn't do because of fear in relation to people. Go forward, knowing that your Lord, your God is going before you. So sift through the fear issues as you move forward in your life, and God will raise you up with his righteous right hand as you move forward. And you don't have to go through all the shenanigans that Jacob did before he met his brother.
Yeah, this message was very applicable for sure.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you guys are facing a big decision and going to Florida, but you guys always make the big moves. I mean, you definitely got that power couple thing going on, but I'm sure there's fear. There's got to be.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily, it's actually just providing clarity to the reason why people are acting the way they're acting around us.
Yeah.
It doesn't, like, I feel more focused like than ever right now. Like,
yeah, I think it's just more of the fear, never giving into the fear of men, never giving into like what's happening, not looking right or left, and just having that tunnel vision. Really what it is, it's not ever straying from that path of that tunnel vision, even though things are obviously, when you feel like, oh, what's happening around me, it's like it doesn't matter. It really